Welcome to another episode of the Plutus Awards podcast. Our community is filled with hundreds of stories from creators and entrepreneurs just like you. And through this podcast, we plan to share these stories from bloggers to podcasters, writers, speakers, and more.
Today's guest is Jeff Rose from Good Financial Sense. How are you doing today, Jeff?
I am doing well.
Awesome. Well, it's so good to have you on. And we are going to talk about video today and using video to great effect with your blog. So how did you get into video? Because that was not your original medium.
Yeah, so I had started Good Financial Sense back in 2008. I was still practicing financial advisor, still had to deal with compliance, but I was still crushing it, at least for my terms, because I really had no context what that really meant. But for someone that knew nothing about blogging, and the fact that I actually had more than like 5 people coming to my site a day, I was pretty ecstatic. You know, after blogging for, I think it was almost like two and a half years, I remember I had this moment where I felt like I had made it. And for me, that was, I surpassed 100,000 unique visitors to my blog in 1 month. And I was just like blown away. I just felt like, man, nobody can stop me. Like, what's the song? No one can stop me. I'm all the way up.
You can't stop me now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to have a Queen dance party here in a second.
There you go. Man, like I just felt unstoppable, you know, and like just anything that I would publish, I just felt like was getting ranked and was driving new eyeballs to the site. And then fast forward a few short months, and I recall it was April, I think it was 11th or 12th, and right before tax time. And I remember that date so well is because that's when Google released their first algorithm update. At least that was like by a name, and it was named after an animal. Right.
Yeah. Those days, the Panda.
The Google Panda update. I can just remember logging into analytics, you know, and basically it looked like the stock market looks like right now. It looks just all of a sudden like just drove off a cliff.
Right. For context, we're recording this in the midst of a stock market crash. So
yes,
just so you all know.
My traffic and analytics, I mean, the graph looked exactly the same. And I'm like, okay. I remember I wasn't in a Facebook group at the time, but there was a forum or there was some other group that I was in. And somebody made a comment and said, hey, did your traffic, take a hit? And I did a quick check. I had some client meetings that day, so I didn't really get a chance to like dive into it. I was like, no big deal. And then the very next day I logged in again and nothing had changed. Like it was still at the bottom. And all of a sudden, like panic mode started setting in. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? And after a few days, that's when I realized, oh man, I got hit. I just started looking up the Google Panda update and recognizing I don't know what I did. I wasn't doing anything black hat. I wasn't like buying links. I wasn't doing anything shady. I really had no idea what I was doing for that, for the most part. And I didn't know how to fix it. Google doesn't have like a 1-800 hotline to call and, call their traffic support center, and didn't have any grief counselors to listen to you, and no support chat rooms or anything. And it was so bad. I ended up taking a few weeks off and just not really publishing any new content. And I'm like, okay, I had to kind of remind myself, okay, what was the whole point of me doing this? Like, why did I start the blog? A lot of the motivation, yes, it was a marketing tool for my financial planning practice, but I truly did enjoy publishing content, networking with other personal finance bloggers, and just, truly helping people. I just like, all right, that was my mission. That's why I started this. Like what I was doing worked up until a certain point, but like, what do I need to do differently going forward? When I started the blog 3 years prior or so, like I was one of the only financial planners, certified financial planners that was blogging consistently. Now, by this time, more started, showing up, more started coming on the radar. So I started thinking, okay, well, what can I do different now? Like, how do I stand out? And at the time, I mean, there was only a handful of financial planners that actually were on YouTube that were doing video. the biggest reason at the time was because of compliance.
Oh, yeah.
And for those that aren't familiar with, you almost like, I have to go back to those days.
Compliance.
But, compliance. And what does that mean? So just imagine that you're a content creator, and before you hit publish on anything, a blog post, a podcast, a video, you have to have your script or your post pre-approved before you can actually hit publish. And when it came to doing blog posts that way, I had a system down where I kind of knew what I could say, what I couldn't say. I figured it out and I kept pushing through. But when it came to video, it's like, okay, this is going to be an entirely different animal. So I had to basically script out for the most part, like what I was going to say. Now, I can say this now because I'm no longer an advisor,
right.
But I didn't like script it out word for word. At the time, I'd figured out how to use a transcription service to write most of my blog posts. So I would just come up with a topic and I would just kind of talk it out, what I thought I was going to say in the video. And then I would send that transcript into my compliance and, see if that would get approved or not. And that's how I was able to start producing video content.
Very cool.
It's one thing to have like an article pre-approved, but to actually have like a video script pre-approved and then to record the video. Just imagine this, like for those that do video, like the work it takes to script out the video, set up your camera, set up your lighting, hit record. Maybe you're doing your own editing. And
it's
then
why I don't do video. Let's be honest.
Then you export it. Then in my case, I'd have to like share that with my compliance, and they could. And I think in one case did say, hey, at 1 minute and 57 seconds, you said this, you need to change it to this. Like, you just don't go back and like, okay, I gotta go put it like the same lighting, the same clothing, the same, just everything. Like, that's just a pain in the what. But I was resilient. I'm like, man, I'm going to figure this out. And I did. And I started just publishing video content. It wasn't long after that I finally made a transition with my business where I didn't have to have my videos pre-approved. That was a big change. But that was really the impetus of why I started video content, because I wanted to show Google, who had slapped me very, very rudely, with my traffic. I'm like, okay, well, I want to show you that this is not just some 9-to-5er that's, like writing about personal finance. Like, I wanted to show like, hey, I'm an authority in this space. Like, I deserve, the traffic that I'm getting. So I started doing more video content, eventually, started a podcast, and just really wanted to show, Google that this was a all media, all purpose, high authority site.
You mentioned a little bit earlier when you took a step back for a few weeks and realized, your mission. How has that influenced the direction of your videos? How has understanding your mission and your purpose for doing this, how has that influenced the way you've moved forward?
One thing is, it's really listening to your audience. And, for me in the beginning, a lot of my inspiration, motivation was from my either existing clients and or potential prospects, that were engaging me with my services, just based like off the questions that they were answering, the concerns that they had. And that was a lot of the inspiration. And then after that, it started into all the comments I was getting on my blog, all the people that were filling out my contact form or my questionnaire, on my site, the comments on the YouTube channel, and really just seeing like, man, what is that common thread of questions that I'm getting from everywhere? And that has just really been the driving force to, like, one of the biggest fears I had starting the blog was a question I used to get, and I still get from several people, like, how do you come up with all your ideas? Like, I just feel like if I did that, I would just run out. And the reality is like, no, like I don't have enough time in the day, even though I'm quarantined in my house right now, but I don't have enough time in the day to produce all of the content that I could, just based off all the questions and money situations, financial situations that people are in. I just try to identify like, what is the most common questions right now, common concerns that I'm getting. And that is really what's been the driving force of currently right now, the videos that I'm posting or the content that I'm writing for either for my blog or other media sites.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. A lot of us kind of, we think about, oh my gosh, okay, let's check the SEM rush. Let's see what's happening there, and try and come up with ideas around the SEO. And you do have to pay attention to that. I mean, let's be honest, like we all have to pay attention to SEO, like we do. But I like how you talk about finding those ideas from your audience, finding the questions that people ask. And I remember back in the day when, you did do videos, you were like, let's talk about this client of mine. I mean, you never divulged anything private or anything personal, but there was that very real idea that, oh, this is a situation a real person is in, and this applies to me.
Most definitely. When you work with a number of people, and I was probably had about 150, 200 households at the time, and that was anywhere from 20-year-olds on up to 70-plus-year-olds. But you put any group in a certain age group, and like you still had the similar questions. Yes, a little bit different. Everybody's got different backgrounds, different situations, but for the most part, they were the same. And when I found myself like answering the same questions to like say all my baby boomer clients, like, okay, if all my baby boomer clients have the same question, then chances are there are other baby boomers out there that are going to have like the exact same question. And same thing to Gen Xers, Gen Yers, millennials. And so like it was just trying to find like what's the most common questions and like just produce content that's going to be able to help as many people as possible.
Is doing video, does that feel like it connects more with the folks you're trying to help than, maybe text? How does that work as far as audience interaction? And how does that build trust with your audience?
It was one of those things I always felt like it would, but like, at the time, like this is going back however many years, like I didn't have any data to really back it up. I didn't have like any case studies to back it up. And one of the first pieces of video content that I produced it was called a flip cam, I believe, but it really didn't even flip. But I don't know if you remember these things. It was like about the size of an iPhone, and it was just like a little rectangle. It was not 4K. It wasn't even HD. I mean, it was like grainy as all get out. And I'm sitting in my living room or my home office. My wife recorded. I'm wearing a polo with like black gym shorts, but you didn't see that part, because that's the beauty of doing video.
Oh my gosh. I actually think I might remember some of these.
And it was like, so I scripted out. I was like, hey, my name is Jeff Rose. Welcome to my blog, Good Financial Sense. And stick around and you'll find some good information and blah, blah, blah. And it was like a 30-second video. I uploaded to YouTube, but then I just pasted it like on my sidebar on my blog. This is before you had like feature area. So it was just like you had your blog post and the sidebar, and it had this little video of me talking. For the longest time, like that was the only video that I had because of compliance. But all of a sudden I started either people coming into my office or people that were contacting me that found me online. They would make this comment like, oh yeah, like I feel like I've already met you because of your video and because I could hear you talk. I could hear your, like, I didn't think I had a Southern accent, but apparently I do. I mean, living in the Midwest for long enough, it just kind of gets you. You just see a picture, but all of a sudden, like, oh, that person has a deep voice or a high-pitched voice or a nasally voice. And you just get a sense of their personality. And that was just from that scripted, grainy 30-second video. And that was the introduction. I went through different phases of producing YouTube content about 2 years ago.
As one does.
It was like anything, right? Just the evolution.
Right. I mean, you can't be the same all the time.
I'll say I went all in and just was producing content, and I was really producing it for YouTube, as opposed in the past, it was all produced for basically for my blog, but I was uploading it to YouTube. When I really started focusing on YouTube, the perception of me being a thought leader in my space, whether that be in investing, personal finance, entrepreneurship, online business, I just started getting more asks and just different people approaching me because of the video presence. It was funny. And like, I'm trying to give like, I guess I give one example, but forgot how many subscribers I had at the time. But YouTube has this little thing called the community tab, which allows you to either, post like you would on social media. You can post just simple text, you can post images, or you can do a poll. And I remember one day I just did a poll. I think it was like, hey, which video idea would you like to see me record next? And other, popular YouTubers do this. And I mean, at the time I had like 1,500 people reply, to this poll. It just really opened my eyes because I'm thinking, where else, social media, blog, email, newsletter, am I actually going to get 1,500 people to respond to a poll like within 24 hours?
Oh yeah, that's a really good point.
And like, that was just like, oh wow, okay. And like at the time, I don't know if I was at 100,000 subscribers yet. So I mean, it just was very like, wow, like you talk about reach, and actually touching people, but like, with email newsletters, like, I mean, just, with spam rates and open rates and everything else, like it was just like a direct line contact. It just hit me. And there's other examples, whether it be people commenting a course that I pre-launched, different things that I was promoting, that having the YouTube presence, the video presence, just gave me more, gosh, like almost like more credibility than the blog itself, even though, the blog was how many more years older and how much more content that was on there. But it was the video that by far just people hearing me talk about it as opposed to me writing about it. It's like, oh, wait, he's a real deal. You can tell like I'm not scripted. I'm just talking from experience and matter of fact. And I think people could really relate and resonate with that.
So let's talk about that. I mean, you said you made the shift from making videos for your blog that you posted on YouTube to actually making videos for YouTube. What are some of the key differences? What are some of the key things you need to change in your approach if you make that shift? If you're actually making videos for YouTube and that are meant to be on YouTube and not just YouTube hosting these videos for other places, how do you go about doing that in a practical manner?
I just got to give a shout out here to a fellow FinConner, also a neighbor of mine, Ryan Ganoff from Cash Money Life and the Military Wallet.
Yay. Hi, Ryan.
He probably doesn't even remember this, but this was during I think it was my second YouTube phase. I think I've gone through 4 phases. But the second one was I'm like, hey, how can I produce simple, like easy YouTube content? And that was like, I'm just going to answer questions. So I would like introduce the reader question, subscriber question, and then answer the question. But the big mistake that I made was I just talk too much, like I just kind of like ramble on, like, and I think I'm being funny, it's probably like, 7% of my viewing audience.
You're a reasonably funny guy. Reasonably.
Thank you for saying that. Like, I will accept that. Sometimes I think I'm long-winded and funny. And I remember like Ryan actually making a comment, and I don't know if he actually messaged me. I don't know if he did it on YouTube. I think it was like a private comment, maybe it had been a text, but he basically said, hey, great video, but it took you 1 minute and 39 seconds to actually get to the content. And I heard that, I appreciate it. But like, I remember thinking to myself, thank you for saying that. But like, this is my channel and I'm going to do it the way that I want. So I really didn't change much then, but like, I still didn't forget that comment. So fast forward my third YouTube phase, which was very short lived. I hired a professional videographer. We filmed 12 videos, published them all, and 11 out of 12 of them bombed. And I mean bombed, I don't think like they even surpassed like 500 views.
Oh, that's amazing. So
I took another break. And then the fourth phase was just recognizing that like when people are coming to your channel, we're not doing family vlogs or daily vlogs, we're not doing the Mr. Beast challenges, we're not doing this crazy stuff. So people are typically coming to our channel, I say our, personal finance, investing, they're coming there because they want to get something, some value, some information so they can apply to their life. And the quicker that you get to the point, the better. Even though like I dismissed Ryan's comment, and I had several comments on so many videos of commenters saying, hey, the video actually starts here. And they would put a timestamp in the comments, so people could skip forward, to like the 2-minute mark. And like, so like all these signs are like coming, and yet I'm just like dismissing it. So I'm like, oh no, like I want to do it my way. But then it was, I hired Tim Schmoyer. He's a video creator. He's also in the FinCon YouTube group. And I hired him, and he just did a look at my analytics. I mean, it was all there. I just had to see it. And like, he was showing me like, hey, you're losing 75% of your viewers like in the first minute, or first 30 seconds. It's like, and this is why. It took me hiring somebody, paying a lot of money to basically reveal to me something that had already been revealed a long time ago by a fellow FinConner, Ryan Ganoff, because save a lot of money. But just being more quick to the point is one of the most simplest ways. And then, you got clever editing and B-roll and all that stuff. But really, like, if you just do that and that alone, like that will keep people on your videos longer because you're actually getting the point and you're answering the question of why you're there.
Yeah. And I really like how this ties back to what you were talking about earlier about, answering that question somebody has, really being useful and doing good for your audience. And getting right to the point, I think, is part of that. Now, I want to kind of back up a little bit and talk about this third phase of YouTube. I hired a professional videographer and it like bombed all over the place. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that the professional videographer videos did not do as well as your other videos.
Do we really have to go back there? I mean, that was like kind of like a phase of my life.
Yes, we did. We're pulling the golden nuggets out of the poop that is your pain.
Okay. So going back, of those videos, one of them did really well. And that's because the person I hired to come to my house, they actually did some clever editing. And that was in a video. I think the title was like, why I hate variable annuities. I mean, that was also like a pretty catchy headline, total clickbait.
That was a classic. I actually remember that one.
I started with like, like something stinks or something like that was in the intro. And he's like, oh, we need to have you like opening your trash can. So he was actually had the camera like on the floor looking up. I'm opening the trash can and just like some clever editing that I wouldn't even thought of because I wasn't watching that type of YouTube content back then. So that one did well. So that was the good one. The other ones, it was the same premise. It was me answering reader questions, but it was done in a very stale, didn't really have any jokes, didn't have any like funny memes, and it was also long-winded. It was like basically the same stuff I was doing. It just looked
prettier,
a little better. Yeah, it just looked prettier. And the other aspect too is, and I've recognized this, is you can go back and forth with this. It just really depends on your personality type and what you're capable of. I cranked out 12 videos in a half a day.
Good grief.
I was exhausted, but I did it. I will also say that, yeah, I did it. But I mean, by that, your last 3 or 4 videos, I mean, you're just doing it just to do it. You're going through the motions. The creators that are really crushing it on YouTube, I mean, they're not batching. They're not doing 12 videos in a day. Like maybe at best they're doing 2 videos, but most of them, like, man, they might do a video in a day or a video in like 2 or 3 days. Because there is an art to it. Now, we all don't have the time, to do that, unless you're just like all in on YouTube. But trying to like crank out content just to crank out, you're not going to get the same type, in my experience. There has to be some creativity to it. And I've seen that. The more that for me right now, the videos that do the best are, I don't script out videos, but I do outline videos, like kind of like, all right, here's the title, here are like my 4 or 5 bullet points. And then I'll just start jotting down notes with each bullet point. And when I do that, and that takes me like maybe 3 or 4 days, not like, 10, 15 minutes like a day. But like the more I start thinking about it, I start thinking about, oh, what's a movie that I used to watch, that has like a funny scene that I can incorporate there, or here's a funny joke that I could do, or a funny meme. And it just allows that creativity to kind of like come through in those videos. And that's what's really helped. And it just helps a lot too, because it makes it a lot more fun, a lot more engaging. And you can also tell just by the comments, the watch time, the views. I mean, it's just, it's just obvious when you can see like the night and day difference between the two.
So you talked about when you're batching, you kind of get to the end and you're just sort of going through the motions. Do you think that viewers can feel that? I mean, does that kind of take away from some of the authenticity that people connect with?
The only metric that I have is based off of, it's the views, it's the likes, it's the comments. And I know a lot of that is in conjunction with the YouTube algorithm, but I do feel like they are one and the same, because if more people are watching it and they're watching it longer, there's something behind that. It's either the editing, the delivery, the message, the information, whatever. And if you're just going through the motions, I can imagine somebody on stage, giving a motivational talk that, all right, I'm going to get you guys pumped today. Let's go. Woo. As opposed to like, shout out to another FinCon or Grant Baldwin, who has put hours upon hours of preparation before actually taking a stage and putting on a performance. You can tell the difference. And I think the same thing applies to video. You look to other media sites, other channels, other content creators, just looking at headlines, look at titles of posts and articles and podcasts and videos, to get inspiration. And I would see something on, say, like Forbes or Business Insider, for example, like, oh, that's a catchy headline. And I'm going to take that headline and I'm going to basically take that piece of content and change it a little bit, alter it to my story. And that way I can crank it out really quick. And for the most part, like those are the ones that have pretty much bombed. And that's just because like I was trying to produce a video for the sake of producing a video.
Does that mean sometimes, do you have a schedule? Like, do you say, okay, well, you're talking about producing a video just to produce a video. Does this mean that sometimes you're like, if you're not feeling it or you don't see something that is really resonating, does that mean you just kind of skip? Or do you try and sort of stick to a schedule? Like, how do you make that schedule? How do you make that happen?
Yeah, I've still reserved like Tuesdays as my video focus day. It doesn't always work out. But I would tell you, like, it was really hard for me to do this. But over the summer, I took some time off from YouTube, didn't publish nearly as much content. And I found myself, I started falling into the content producing hamster wheel that I did with my blog, years ago, where it's like, oh, if I'm doing 2 posts a day, I need to crank it up to 3 posts a day. Oh, I'm doing 3. I need to go to 4. 4, I need to go to 5. Hey, let's just publish 2 pieces of content every single day. And I remember, I love getting shout outs to other FinConners, but it was the very first FinCon, and it was Ramit, and it was his opening keynote. And I remember him saying, you're not going to change the world, publishing 3 to 5 posts a week. I mean, I'm paraphrasing here, but
right, yes.
But I just remember that because like I just was in that belief, like, oh, I gotta crank out content. Like I have to. And I finally recognized, like, no, like if I publish once a week, I'm okay. If I publish once a month, it's actually okay. Now that was after, I already had published like several hundred posts. But I started following in that same trap with YouTube. It's like, oh, I'm doing 2 videos a week. I should do 3 videos a week. Oh, well, I'm doing 2 long form videos on Tuesday, Thursday, a wealth hack video on Wednesday. And I'm going to do a motivational Monday video. Oh, what about a flex Friday? I mean, I didn't do that, but it's just like all of a sudden, like I fell into this, like I got to crank out content. And all of a sudden now, like I was getting stressed out. All self-imposed, like, nobody was telling me, hey, you need to do this or you better do this or else. But I just felt like, man, if I really want to grow this thing. And I mean, there definitely are examples of that. Graham Stephan, who I was on a panel with at FinCon last year, I mean, he is cranking out 3 to 4 videos a week on his main channel. He's got a second channel now, and God bless him. I mean, he is growing like gangbusters. For some, it works out, but he is the same guy that he also, I don't know, for those that are at the panel, like, you didn't sense a lot of happiness or like fulfillment with how much he was working to do it. But nonetheless, you can't discount like the following and the subscribers and just the impact that he's had in a short amount of time. But at least for me, just recognizing that I'm getting stressed out for no reason, like my blog's on autopilot. Like this was supposed to be meant for fun, and for helping people. And now I'm stressed out. My family can tell I'm stressed out. And it's like, you know what? I just want to spend some more time with my family and just unplug. And it was good. And now there have been several days where I felt that pressure, like, oh, I need to do a video. I'm getting ready to set it up. I got the camera set up. And all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I just don't feel it. Like, I just don't feel it. And I just gave myself permission, like, you know what? I don't have to record this today. And that's just for me. Like, whenever I get the record bug, like I feel it, like let's go. I'm ready to hit record. So like there are some times I don't record. And if I don't publish a video that week, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I like that kind of approach and that kind of balanced look at things, because sometimes you're right. Like we do as content creators. I mean, good grief. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't write a really big long post this week, it's the end of the world. And then I was like, well, no, it's not. Like, what do I have to say this week? I don't really feel it. So I skipped that week. And you know what? It was fine. Like, it was fine.
I think that's something we all feel, and especially since we are all entrepreneurial types and there never is an end. And, you could write 12, 3,000 word posts in a day. You're like, well, gosh, I wish I could have done 13, It's just giving yourself that permission to like, man, I need a break. And we all need a break. We need to rest and get our creativity juices going again, and just give yourself that permission.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on the Plutus Awards podcast to talk about video and YouTube. So if you could please, Jeff, just remind everybody where they can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, so you can follow my blog, goodfinancialsense.com, and also my YouTube channel. You can search Jeff Rose, or Wealth Hacker is actually the name of my YouTube channel. And I'm most active on Twitter at JJeffRose. That's 2 J's, no stuttering problem. JJeffRose is my Twitter handle.
Big thank you for joining us for the Plutus Awards podcast. We appreciate your taking some time out of your day to join us here. In next week's episode, we'll be joined by Gwen Mares, so make sure you're subscribed so that you can get that episode and more from the Plutus Awards podcast. You can learn more about our guests and the Plutus Awards podcast by visiting plutusawards.com/podcast and on Instagram @PlutusAwards. Once again, thanks for joining us, and remember to keep creating.